Today, I'm honored to welcome Harley Lippman, a foreign policy analyst on major networks such as Fox and ABC, and also five Arabic TV networks regularly. He's also a geopolitical analyst who spent decades at the intersection of U.S. foreign policy, Middle East diplomacy, and strategic analysis behind the scenes. Harley is also a businessman and he holds a master's in international affairs from Columbia University and has been a presidential appointee to the U.S. Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad under every administration since George W. Bush. Harley serves on the executive committee of AIPAC and has participated in high level Anti Defamation League missions across the region since the 1990s, including direct engagement with both Israeli and Palestinian leadership. Now, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. It's great to have you with us to shed some light on what's going on. How do you read the situation right now after we saw that Donald Trump had his text on Truth Social the other day where he said that whole civilization might be extinguished, or paraphrasing, and then the next day he said that the golden age of the Middle East is here to come. How do you read what's going on?
Well, I think that was a good strategic move on his part to go nuclear, or say he would go nuclear, for lack of a better word, meaning nuclear, not literally, but to bomb the power plants and take out their energy and perhaps oil resources, because it did bring them to the negotiating table. So you could say that it worked on that basis. But the situation is very, very problematic now. Very difficult. You know, where we are right now, and that's what we're speaking about, rather than give an overview of how we got here, I think viewers want to hear, where are we now? And what does it look like with this so-called ceasefire? And perhaps one way to start is who's winning or who won. And you can make a case either way, actually. One, you can make a case that the United States won. Why? Because maybe by reversing it, I don't know how Iran could say that they've won when American and Israeli planes could fly all over the country unhindered. I mean, think about that. They only shot down one plane, where, there's been 13,000 strikes. So that doesn't sound like a victory. And even doing that deep into their territory, they couldn't even capture the co-pilot who was shot down. So hardly sounds like a victory to me. And when your Navy is at the bottom of the ocean, that doesn't sound like a victory. Your Air Force is destroyed. Most of your missile batteries, it's hard to know how much, are destroyed. That doesn't sound like a victory. Economically, the country was teetering already, so it was in far worse shape. There are estimates I'm already reading that it cost Iran $400 to $500 billion in damages. So, and of course, they lost their entire experienced leadership. And that matters because those people built a strong relationship based on trust forged during the Iraq-Iranian War of the 1980s. So all that is lost. That damages cohesion, morale. It affects processes. They lose experience. There's a new leadership that comes in that creates rivalries, jealousies as to who gets appointed over somebody else. So it causes a lot of instability inside the regime. We don't see it. And while they've shown a lot of resilience, don't confuse resilience with strength. The best example is, I'll give you a book I read not too long ago by Ian Kershaw that showed that in the last 9 months of World War II, the German army fought more aggressively and tenaciously and took more casualties than they did in the 3 years prior. And this is when they knew that they were losing the war. So again, resilience is not a strength. So that speaks to the fact that, and overall, their military apparatus and apparatus of repression have been very much downgraded, very much. So that would speak to an American and perhaps Israeli victory, if you will. But here's the flip side. the the other side of the coin says, what victory is there? Uh, America does not have their enriched uranium that can make nuclear bombs. Now it's been so buried, you could say Trump said we have surveillance. We'll see if they take it out. Well, Trump has another 3 years. What about another president that statistically it may be a liberal Democrat? They may not have the fortitude to monitor and act on that if they wait a few years to dig up from the ruins and the damage this enriched uranium. You have that concern. And I think the two biggest issues that the United States has to contend with if you're going to define success is nuclear and Strait of Hormuz. There are secondary issues, missiles, proxies, and the freedom of the Iranian people. But let's just focus on the top two, nuclear. I just commented on that. And then when you talk about Strait of Hormuz, that's a big one because we've all but conceded Iranian control of the state of Hormuz, of the Straits of Hormuz. And this is an open international waterway. It's not like the Suez Canal, which is man-made, and they do charge a tribute, a tariff, call it what you will. This is an open international waterway, and to have terrorists have a toll meter on this international waterway would be catastrophic for the world. 20% is a big number. 20% of the world's energy goes as well as other important materials and products like fertilizer and helium. Helium you need for semiconductors. Fertilizer, we know what that's used for, and many other supplies and products come through there. It leaves and the Arab Gulf nations left vulnerable and worried on the side. Iran can now open up and fire drones at will. Uh, they're willing to take punishment. I'm very worried about the long term. I think the problem is that while America's had great tactical success, if it doesn't translate into an economic and strategic victory, then it's problematic. If not, we lost. Examples of that is Napoleon won every battle in Russia, but they lost the war because they couldn't get rid of Alexander, the ruler. And Germany in World War II, also in the beginning of the war, won every battle when they attacked the Soviet Union in 1940, 1941. But they never got beyond the Ural Mountains to take out the factories that were rolling out the best tanks of World War II, the Russian T-34 and other equipment that the Russians were building at will without worrying about being attacked from the air. The Tet Offensive in Vietnam, the United States clearly won that military victory, but politically lost. So you could have tactical success, but without strategic and economic success, that's very worrisome. And here's the problem. Our weaknesses are exposed. Trump wants a quick war. Iran is taking note of that and has a strategy for that. They're going to hold on and wear America out. They're taking a playbook from the North Vietnamese that would do the same thing, make 10 points. The way the North Vietnamese were masters at negotiations, Iran is arguably even better. They'll make notes on those points. They'll ask America to respond to them. They'll drag it out. They want to wear America down. They know they can't defeat America in a conventional war, and that's not their goal. Their goal is what they call asymmetric. Their goal is to defeat America domestically. They know the polls show the war is not that popular. They know that there's midterm elections and the president's ratings has gone down somewhat. They are playing to that. They're playing to getting the domestic audience, like in the Vietnam War, to turn against the president and to use that and leverage that for them to win and succeed. That's the problem. And, inadvertently, the United States played into that when the United States says, I this war is only going to be 6 weeks. Well, it's easy to start a war. It's very hard to end a war. Look at Ukraine and Russia. It's in its fifth year. So this is a problem that, I think it would have been better if we said endless wars have no strategic outcome or goals. We don't know how long this war is going to be. And we may need to do boots on the ground because at the end of the day, you want to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. You can't give this victory to Iran. That would be devastating for the United States, Israel, Gulf nations, and the world at large. So you need to put boots on the ground. As far as his comment about taking out power plants and energy resources, I always viewed that as a tactic. I had thought that he would use the boots on the ground. He needs to get more soldiers to secure the Strait of Hormuz. It'll be costly. We'll have to take casualties. So while he's shown a lot of strategic courage, we need to see more strategic resolve because what he's done better than any other president is not kick the can down the road. Every American president since we were humiliated by Jimmy Carter, since we were humiliated under the president Jimmy Carter by Iran, knew they had to do something about the Iranian regime. But they pass it on to the next president, just kick the can down the road. And as I like to say, the can gets heavier and the road gets shorter. So what's happening now is that President Trump has taken them on along with America's ally, Israel. But you now have a regime change, but a more radical one. They view the father is viewed as a softy, if you will, that he didn't really retaliate enough and he stopped the war after Israel and the United States attacked last June. So, uh, and I'm not smart enough to know if you need to destroy, going back to Trump's threat, all the oil and power plants and apparatus. But you could certainly, I would have thought they'd stop the oil from going through, especially Iran is exporting oil. This is what funds the regime. I thought they would seize the oil, either give it to the United States to cut prices on the gas pump, or hold it in reserve for reconstruction in Iran. But, the Iranians do really believe they're winning. They do. And that, now it's a bit delusional, but remember, it's an apocalyptic regime. I'm sorry, it's a messianic regime with an apocalyptic view of the world. So they look at things differently than we do. And where we think of mad, mutual assured destruction during the Cold War, if Soviet Union fires nuclear weapons at us, we'd fire it back. Both nations are destroyed, hence mutual assured destruction. Just for those viewers that may not realize what that is. And to Iran's leaders, that may not be such a bad idea. If you're going to heaven with 72 virgins, they believe something similar to very religious Jews, that they want the apocalypse when the Messiah comes in the extreme Shia religion. So I'm just worried about what comes out of this. They want to wear America down, and when you give a time frame that this will last 6 weeks, or when it was said, President Trump said another 2-3 weeks. The problem with that is, if I were leading Iran, I'd turn to my troops and say, "Hang in there. I know you're in your bunkers, and it's probably your nerves, but it'll be over." The President of the United States said so. He's going to end it in 2-3 weeks. So I think when you signal your enemy with that, you're at a big disadvantage. And at the end of the day, the way you have closure in warfare is you have to utterly and totally defeat your enemy. I've said this on TV lately quite a bit. When I was just on Jesse Waters on Fox, he asked me, does Iran think that they're defeated? And I said, well, World War One, Germany lost. They did not feel defeated. They came back to war 20 years later. But after World War II, Germany did feel defeated because they were utterly and totally destroyed. And 80 years later, they still have no appetite for war. So the lesson of warfare, which people are troubled to embrace because warfare is so catastrophic and horrible and people die and things are destroyed, that they repel at what has to be done. It's like if you have a pain in your tooth and it goes away, it's going to come back. You need to go to the dentist. It's an infection or a cavity or something like that. You go, oh, it's gone. I don't need to do anything. You'll brush your teeth more and you think it somehow goes away. It doesn't go away like cancer. You have to address it and deal with it. This is the analogy with Iran. It's not going away. They'll come back. And the problem is if you wait a year or 2 years from now, I think the alternative is, do you want to have war with Iran now when they don't have nuclear weapons, or have war with Iran when they do have nuclear weapons? And I think that's where we're at.
I think the whole world was expecting Donald Trump and the administration to actually put boots on the ground with the signals we saw with USS Trinity going over there and a bunch of US Marines being shipped over there. And but suddenly he shifted and wants to deal with Iran instead. Why do you think he pivoted like that and wanted to seek a deal? Is the U.S. administration under a lot of pressure because economically, because of the Hormuz Strait and these things? How do you read that pivoting?
Well, one, he could have done it as a ploy to distract Iran and let Iran think that it was going to happen, or he was doing that as a way, as you mentioned, to actually take the Straits of Hormuz. It's hard to know. All I do know is that, to your last comment, yes, I think he's very worried about the impact of energy. This is the biggest energy crisis in our generation, and we will feel the impact. We haven't felt it yet as much. A little bit at the gas pump, but even there, it's not that much. I mean, inflation has gone up maybe 100 basis points. It's not that bad. But it's going to get worse. And I think, yes, he was mindful of all that, and he wanted a quick resolution. Problem is the enemy always has a vote where you think you could, decide it on your terms. The enemy isn't going to be cooperative. And in warfare, there are surprises. There are losses and defeats. Even though we've had spectacular, extraordinary wins on the battlefield, I think that, he likes quick outcomes. We're held hostage in America by the notion of no boots on the ground and no endless wars. That's a mistake, but maybe politically there was no way around it to attack Iran. You perhaps had to say that, or too many people, particularly his base, may have uh, been very much against him even attacking Iran. So Iran has managed to turn a loss, which they do have, into leverage for potential victory. You can't have a terrorist toll master, deciding who comes and goes on such an important open international waterway. But they've got control of that right now, and maybe you need the world coalition to help you, but that's problematic. President Trump has had difficult relationship with European allies. Um, over things like Greenland. But Greenland is nothing more than getting Denmark to defend that area, because strategically, this is where Russia or China would send missiles over the United States. The United States is the least protected over that area. And there's really nobody guarding Greenland. You need to know that. But that all said, I think that at the end of the day, I don't know if President Trump has a strategic resolve. I don't know if he'll be able to have the domestic support. I don't know exactly how it should be scripted, but something like, we don't know how long this, they have broken the ceasefire, if they break it, or if they can come to terms. If they come to terms, the two biggest things that he needs is nuclear and opening the Straits of Hormuz. If he gets that, that's a win for the United States and for the world. Doesn't get that, it's not a win. So then the question is what to do after that. And that's where I think it's about leadership and communication to explain to the American people the importance of the Strait of Hormuz and the importance of not letting them get a nuclear weapon. You know, I speak very often about their goal to have ICBMs. They could reach Israel with missiles. They're doing it regularly. So why do they need long-range missiles? There's only one reason: to reach the United States. So, and I speak to that. I don't know if we have time in this podcast to
Yeah.
do that, but one of the things that I was asked about is, you know, and this is a big issue here, isn't this really Israel's war? Did kind of Netanyahu drag Trump into it? And that's very dangerous because A, it's not true, and B, it will conjure up even more anti-Semitism in the United States. So my response to that is let's look at the facts. In 1987 and 1988, Trump, as a civilian, talked about the need to attack Iran. He did that on multiple interviews. I think one was Barbara Walters. You can look it up. There are videos where he says it. Bibi Netanyahu first started speaking about the dangers of Iran in 1992. Trump was ahead of Bibi Netanyahu in recognizing the threat from Iran. Then in 1979, when uh, Iran took American diplomats hostage in Tehran, there was an Israeli embassy with Israeli diplomats. They didn't take Israeli diplomats hostage. They took American diplomats hostage. Then shortly thereafter in Beirut, they bombed the American embassy. They didn't bomb an Israeli embassy. Then shortly after that, they attacked an American Marine barracks, killing hundreds of Americans. They didn't attack an Israeli equivalent Marine barracks. And they made 2 assassination attempts on President Trump, according to the FBI, and threats on other senior officials from his first administration who have to have bodyguards 24/7 because of that. I'm not aware of any assassination attempt on the life of Bibi Netanyahu from Iran. So I think when you look at those facts, it's clearly America's war. Also, Israel's, but exactly as Iran describes it, Israel's the little Satan. And Israel, due to close proximity, has different needs and issues than America does. America has some time. Israel doesn't. So I just want to address that issue about Israel pulling America into war. And then last, my comment on that, you're almost saying that the president of the United States is a traitor because you're saying that a foreign leader has been able to influence the president of the United States to do something against the best interests of the United States. That's a dangerous accusation, and of course, clearly not true. So, for all those reasons, again, look at who says it. It says more about them and their agenda than the merits of their accusation that Israel dragged America into this war with Iran.
How do you read the dynamics between the U.S. and Israel now in this situation? We've seen the U.S. administration with Trump wanting to agree to a deal, and then I'm seeing already now, especially here in Norway and our media, Israel getting the blame for still fighting against Hezbollah up in Lebanon, and then somehow getting the blame for there not being a way to a deal, as Israel always gets blamed, of course. How do you see that resolving, or what kind of
Oh,
way can we see?
I just saw Vance, Vice President Vance, who's part of these negotiations. You can't get more senior than that, other than presidential summit. So even he said clearly Lebanon was not part of the deal. And Vance is not the most friendly to Israel, so he said that. But Iran is interpreting it differently. So what are the options now? So now, once again, Iran very cleverly, very manipulative. Remember, these people invented chess. They're very, very, very smart. Do not underestimate them. I think arguably they're, if not the best negotiators in the world, among the best. So very, very clever to now make it look like Israel's getting in the way of a deal, which is not fair and not accurate. So the options for Trump is to lean on Israel, and Bibi Netanyahu will not like it, but to make him stop fighting in Lebanon, and Israel will have to comply with that. Or pushes back on Iran and says, you're making a mistake. Lebanon is not part of the deal. I don't know, there may be some variation of that, but I think those are the options that the president has right now. I think the likelihood is Israel will back off, needs America, and doesn't want to get in the way if the president could make a deal. Maybe a deal could be had. We'll find out. I think it's unlikely. I think Iran feels that they're winning. They feel time is on their side, mostly because they think the American people don't have the stomach to continue to fight the war, and that's a big, big problem. You know, playing to domestic pressure is the single biggest theme I want to share with your viewers. This is what is getting in the way of getting rid of this demonic regime. It's a death cult. You know, obviously they don't care about their own people like Hamas. They're taking a playbook from Hamas, taking civilians around power plants as human shields. They've studied the Vietnam War a lot, and they're taking a playbook from the North Vietnamese negotiators. So that's a problem. And, you know, unlike North Vietnam that just wanted South Vietnam to be unified as we see now, Iran is different. They have for 47 years been at war with America in the West and Israel. And, you know, they said they want to destroy America, and they say it every day. And, you know, it's arrogance to think you know better what your enemy means in their own words. Israel was guilty of that and paid a big price, but recovered. Hamas regularly said that they would go to try to destroy Israel and kill every man, woman, and child regularly. And what were they doing building those tunnels, spending billions of dollars? You know, and Israel didn't pay attention to it to the extent that they would go to destroy the tunnels or stop it. And then look what happened. And just think, if Hezbollah had those tunnels and invaded Israel, which they do have those tunnels, not as extensive as Hamas. It's a city under Gaza. It goes for 500, 600 miles at least. It's bigger than the New York City subway system. It shows how extraordinary that is. But if Hezbollah had stormed across the border, had people from Syria done it, and people rose up in the West Bank on October 7th, I don't know if Israel would have survived that. Israel was already deeply traumatized by what happened on October 7th, still is. If it would have happened in other areas of Israel, remember along the border of Gaza, it's not that populated. Northern Israel is much more. And then you think of the West Bank, and we all know the small size of Israel. And then maybe Israeli Arabs, a certain number would have risen up. And if they would have started murdering Israelis with knives or things like that, who knows what it would have been like. So that's the danger of underestimating your enemy. It's arrogance. You think you know better what your enemy means than their own words. They say they want to kill you. Believe them. This is what Iran has been saying, and their actions are consistent with their words. And when people say, oh, it's bravado, oh, it's propaganda, again, I keep saying it's arrogance, but I'll add another theme. Can you afford to take the chance? You know, it's like in America, they criticize Trump saying there wasn't an immediate threat. Well, you know what they mean by that? That we have to show documents to show that on March 2nd, we know that they're going to launch an attack on Europe and our allies. You know, what is the likelihood that, or worse in the future, that we know they're going to launch an attack on the United States? They just maybe can't reach it yet, perhaps, but they will be able to soon. Directionally, they're going that way. They're expanding the length of flight of their missiles all the time. It's getting longer and longer. Look at Diego Garcia. We actually underestimated them. We didn't think they could fire something that went thousands of miles. So to the contrary of the critics, we may be underestimating, not overestimating. So the danger is that imminent threat, you can't wait till the 12th hour. Also, it assumes you'll know it. How likely is it that something that would be kept a secret, like October 7th was kept a secret, because Sinwar kept it to only a very, very small group of people? If they're going to attack the United States, likelihood is we're not going to even know it. I mean, it would be an extraordinary, extraordinary intelligence coup to find that out. But something of that magnitude, the likelihood is they would keep it to maybe a handful of people and we would never know. So this, again, arrogance that we think we're going to know in advance when they're going to attack us. So we could then, so the president could go to the Congress and say, I have proof here. See this documentation? I have proof. We took a screenshot from their intelligence organization that shows they're going to attack us in a week. We got to, or in a month or whatever. They're not going to find that. So imminent threat is used unfairly against the administration. There is an imminent threat. They're doing everything possible to attack us. And the imminent threat is that it's not a matter of days, weeks, or months, but if you believe that that's their end goal, you want to get to them sooner than later for all kinds of reasons.
It seems like that message isn't really coming through to the US public. I think it's concerning to see the horseshoe phenomena in the US with both the far left and also the right now, with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and such actors being so anti Israel, and also I would say anti-Semitic, in saying that Israel is dragging the U.S. into this, and actually playing on old anti-Semitic tropes and patterns without maybe even
Can I
knowing it
make a
themselves.
suggestion to you, Henrik? Can I make a
Yeah,
suggestion?
please.
This is what I say to people. If you don't mind me saying this, I wouldn't use the word tropes.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why. I hear that all the time. It bounces off. It has
Mhm.
it doesn't resonate, especially if you're trying to get to young people. I'll bet you they don't even know what it means. So it loses the impact. I know you're saying this goes to classic or historic, where people use Jews to blame them. And I get that, but we have to be mindful of communication.
Yeah.
To your excellent comment that this is not being spoken about in the United States, I'll tell you why. Because podcasts that you have, Henrik, are not on national television. I'm on television all the time. I think I shared with you before the call. In the month of March, I was on television 43 times. Problem is, television is all about brevity, sound bites. They have me on, they guide me. They want me to give them an answer in 30 seconds, maybe a minute. But, and they keep you on for, it varies 5 minutes typically or something or less, you know. So the problem is you need to explain this. And with people's lack of attention and with the media process to give communication in sound bites of a minute or so, it's not able to be explained. It's hard to do that. But I think it doesn't have to be me, anybody, but you need to explain what I'm sharing with you as to why we have to have a different approach to dealing with an existential threat to America and America's friends like Israel and other nations.
Where do you think Israel and the U.S. Goals converge and align? Where do you think there's a discrepancy? What are the most important goals that overlap?
Well, I think that it, it we're aligned in almost every way. I mean, we're there's really no daylight between America and Israel's goals. To start with, we represent what we all take for granted, but is I don't want to use words like Western civilization. I told you, I chastised you about tropes. I'm guilty now, chastising myself. People don't care. No young person goes, oh wow, Western civilization is threatened. So, and I use those words because we grew up doing that, but
Yeah.
it
It's so
just doesn't
abstract, right?
resonate. Right?
It's so abstract, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So, but what we all take for granted, is our freedom. That's what we're up against. We're up against uh, dictatorships, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, and freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all the freedoms that we have now. Also, what's at stake is our livelihood, our way of life, and that we're thriving. There are, while I'm sure people suffer, and those are the people who blame Jews for things because Jews are easy to blame instead of digging into your maturity and recognizing you may not have done well in life and take ownership of it. It's just easy to blame others. And Jews are easy victims because it's easy to dislike Jews. And Jews invoke the most destructive emotion that humans have: jealousy, envy. They see Jews as being very successful, pound for pound. And for people who are not successful, it does that. It's that basic. And I think, in my opinion, it's more effective. Kind of explain it that way. So, yes, this is we Jews have many challenges and problems now. A golden age is over of about 80 years since the end of World War II. It was always dormant. It woke up, and we have to deal with it. The way to deal with it, though, I think, is everybody speaks about fighting anti-Semitism. I don't think you could do that. It hasn't worked. All these Jewish organizations have spent huge fortunes of money fighting it. I don't think it worked. I think what we have to do is make ourselves invincible.
How do we do that?
Well, this is where we have political and economic power, and financial power. We challenge universities like Harvard that discriminate against Jews. We work with organizations like AIPAC. We raise money to support candidates uh, who want to strengthen the American-Israel relationship. That's what we have to do. Things of that nature.
A
We
final,
continue to focus on success.
definitely. A final question before we round off the episode. If Iran actually acquired operational nuclear weapons, do you think they'd use it?
Yes. And by the way, let's say I'm wrong. Just the notion that they have it, just think of the immunity it gives them. That if nothing else, then it would make it difficult, not impossible, to retaliate. So if they launched any terror attack strikes, nobody wants to attack a country that has nuclear weapons. So that would be devastating unto itself. But again, of course, they would use it. This is again, as I mentioned earlier, mad is not a bad idea in their mind. They think they're going to go to heaven. They think this is when uh, iman comes back, to make peace in the world. Yes, as I say, they are obsessed with hating the United States and Israel. No nation in American history has been more obsessed with destroying the United States than Iran. And, they've made that very clear. I mean, for 47 years. So I think, again, unless you think you're smarter than the Iranians themselves who say they want to destroy America, I'd stop being in denial. And I think, where denial comes from, for these reasons. It comes mostly from the liberal side, mostly. And why is that? Because liberals think of humanity. They think of goodness in people. I'm not being critical of liberals. And their mind can't fathom that someone would do something this evil. They can't believe it. So they rationalize, and they rationalize also because of fear. They're so afraid of this that if you look at it, it's almost like an emotional reaction. I remember when they did the first Iran deal, the JCPOA under the Obama administration, and and I said, "Well, how could this be a good deal? It expires in 10 to 15 years, which means they could then build nuclear weapons and say, we honored the agreement. Now we're going to build them. It'd be hard to say no once they honored an agreement, preventing them from doing so, where they complied with it. So, and when I spoke to someone at the time, a leading political leader, and I said, well, how could this agreement be good? And he goes, well, what's the alternative? And there are alternatives. Getting a deal that is going to work. They think that if they emotionally get something in writing, we're okay. We did what we could, oblivious to the fact that they don't honor agreements in the Western sense, where you and I make an agreement, we have lawyers, we sign it. The overwhelming likelihood is each one of us will honor it. That's not how Iran thinks. They view it as a tactical step to their goal. So they have no problem tactically taking 1 or 2 steps backwards temporarily to have it advance their ultimate goal. They don't view it as a complete, conclusive ending of something or honoring the agreement. So now, if you could get an agreement where, for example, with nuclear, where there are inspections everywhere, anytime, that's something to seriously look at. That could work. You'd have to look at everything else around it, but you need to do that. I'm just very at the end. I leave you with I'm very worried that we're boxed in a we're boxed in, that we've gone down a rabbit hole, giving a short-term duration to the war. The enemy says we're not going to honor that. We're going to keep firing. Wear them out. They're going to give up. And lastly, what does this signal to China and Russia? If they see America doesn't have a stomach for a war more than a month, that could tempt Russia to attack another European nation, and it could tempt China to take Taiwan. Remember, the Chinese leader said to his military leaders, be prepared for war in 2027. That's a quote from him. And as you know, he's purging his generals who are hesitant about going to war. So again, what does that say? So I think that defeating this regime is critical. Yeah, I'll add another thing that I didn't say earlier about cost. Though since 1979, there have been 66,000 terrorist incidents worldwide in the last nearly 50 years, most of them coming from Iran. That has cost the world over $1 trillion and will continue to be expensive. Think of all the costs relating to terrorism, all the security apparatus you have to build up, the TSAs, all the defenses, the departments you have to create and fund, the weapons you have to create and fund, the harm to the economy when terrorist actions occur. Do the math. Come up with your own number. It'll be a staggering number. So we already have high costs tolerating this regime. So the only way out is regime change at some point, or we'll face horrific consequences.
But do you think that the US population understands that threat
No,
towards the US? Why
no,
don't they?
because unlike Israel, that where Israelis have to go into bomb shelters a few times a day, Americans who are living in Detroit, they are worried about getting their child off to school who's sneezing. Do they keep their child home? They're worried about paying the mortgage. The husband's job is not going so well, and the wife's job, they may have budget cuts. And then the wife is worried about her mother who's ill. And then she's looking forward to a birthday party for her son on the weekend. This is how they spend their time, how people spend their time, so that's what they think about. It's far away. They don't feel it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't resonate with them.
It'll be a bumpy ride going forward, but at least it's important that we speak about it and try to enlighten people as you're doing, Harley, is to the realities of the world. So thank you for joining us today and spending time with us here.
My pleasure. I hope your viewers found it worthwhile.
I think they do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Henrik. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.